Hey everyone, it's Chase with TCG Bulk Kings here. I'm just boxing up, bagging up, packing up, that's the one, packing up my most recent reimbursement invoice. Sorry for the crinkly sounds, I'll try and edit them out as best I can so they're not so annoying. But I wanted to talk a little bit today about a question that I've been being asked a lot lately. Bag number one. Basically, how do I sell cards so cheaply? How can I price cards at 5 cents or 10 cents? How am I making money? How am I still in business? How is this even working? That's what I wanted to talk about today. I've got 3 major points that make it worthwhile for me, and I'm going to lead into that with a little bit of a story time. So way back when I very first started getting interested in bulk selling, what I was doing before this was buying collections, bulk collections, and then picking through them to buy list cards, and then dumping the bulk back out. And I asked the exact same questions. What are people doing with the bulk? How are they making money with bulk? And one of the solutions I found was that there are all these people who are selling singles through TCGplayer for super cheap with 50,000 plus feedback. And they're 100% feedback, still in business. Obviously they're making money or they wouldn't be doing it. How does that work? I started by jumping in because I couldn't find any content about it. Most of y'all know that story already. So I dove in and started figuring it out. Now, I started out with 3,000 Theros Beyond Death cards I picked up off of somebody named Azrael, a big tournament grinder, and he liked to buy a case of every set and build his decks based off of that. Bag 4. So I have these about 3,000 Theros Beyond Death cards, and I just listed them all to see what happened. I listed them all at certain, I don't even remember the pricing strategy I had then. This was way before I was in direct and all that. And they would sell, and it worked, and I built up my all my information that I'm going to share, all this knowledge I'm about to share with you guys based off of actually being in there and doing it. This is not supposition or anything. This is observation. So people always ask me, how is this even possible? How am I doing this? How can you do this? So the first major point of that question is, do the cards even sell? So I found out immediately the cards definitely sell. Even if you're not in direct, the cards sell. So I did a video about this a long time ago, but there's a concept called the long tail. That was a term that was coined around the turn of the millennium when the internet first started really taking off. And it described how there was a bunch of demand for these more obscure or harder to get or less popular items that was blocked by the inefficiencies of pre-internet economy. So like a store could only stock so many items, and so people couldn't go and get the less popular items because the store couldn't afford to stock, you know, the 12,000th most popular item or the 45,000th most popular item. But, well, the internet coming about made things like music so much easier to store as many of as you want, because music is a digital file. You don't have to have a physical CD. So iTunes and other places eventually took over and the music market, because they can stock everything. And it turns out that the long tail of the demand curve, that's what the long tail refers to. Again, go check out my other video about it. Long tail is the original idea is that the demand curve would taper off and eventually hit zero, and everything past that there was no demand for, zero demand for. But it turns out that it never reaches zero, and it just keeps going forever, no matter how many items you have or how many people you have in the market. The tail of that demand curve never hits zero where there's nobody wants it. Somebody wants it. Somebody wants everything. That's one of the driving ideas behind my philosophy, that every card has value. It may not be much value, but there is a price such that every card can sell to somebody. So once I realized every card can sell, I wanted to sell every card, right? I didn't want to just dump them off to buy lists or dump them off to bulk out or anything like that. So the next step of that question of how do you do this? After, do they even sell? Is, don't you lose money? And so that's a little more nuanced, a little more complicated part of it. There's two different aspects to that. One, I'm a seller through the direct program with TCGplayer, which is great. The direct program, the way the fee structures are set up, it allows you to profit on a card that sells for 10 cents or 5 cents, depending on how much you paid for it initially. For direct, for all this, these cards that I'm selling here, that's a no-brainer. If I can sell a 5-cent card and make a penny off of it after I ship it and after I paid for the card and after the fees that TCGplayer takes, I might as well. Right? It's better to make a penny on it than half a penny, right? The reason that's not just a giant time sink and a giant money sink is that the average on a sale isn't just, I'm not just always selling 5-cent cards. The average for this direct order that I'm working on right here is reimbursement to the TCGplayer warehouse. The average card sale cost is 40 cents because there are some higher end cards that sold through the direct program as well. And these other ones just fill that out and it makes it bigger. So what am I looking at? Bag 8. I've done videos about direct before. Everybody knows that I'm big on TCGplayer Direct, so I'm not going to get too much into that. Check out my direct videos for that if you're more interested in that. But there's all these transactions that are not direct orders. They're orders that I have to self-ship. And don't I lose money on those? Don't I get tons of those? Yes, I do have some transactions that I lose money on. If somebody ends up buying a 5-cent card from me, I'm going to lose about 10 to 15 cents depending on the cost of my supplies to ship it. For me, that's kind of a cost of doing business, of being able to do business where I can sell direct these cards in direct at 5 to 10 cents. Because if I set my floor to 25 cents, these cards wouldn't have sold, right? So there's that. I'm making, a couple $100 on those cards and losing 10 or 15 cents on a few transactions every day isn't really that big a deal to me. It's made up for it by the other orders, the other cheapest orders indirect. But for games that are not indirect, like Flesh and Blood or Weisschwarz or whatever, that are only non-direct orders, I'm still okay losing money on some of the transactions for a couple of reasons. One is, again, there's more bigger orders that cover it. And two is that the buyers themselves are incentivized not to make those single card orders like that, because it doesn't make as good financial sense for the buyers either. If someone needs a 10-cent card, then they're going to place an order. They have to place an order for 10 cents plus 99 cents shipping through TCGplayer. They're incentivized to get to that $5 threshold so that they're not having to pay the shipping charge. So they're incentivized to combine cards into a single order. And I get that a lot more out of Flesh and Blood and Weisschwarz than I do Magic and Pokemon, because the direct program incentivizes buying single cards. Buyers typically are, you can tell me all the stories about your dumb cousin Timmy or whatever, but buyers typically are pretty good with their money, and they're going to wait to buy that 10-cent card to when they have 10-cent cards they need to buy. And then I can ship that and be profitable. Like I said, every day I get some card orders that do not hit that break-even threshold, which for me is about 25 cents of product on an order. Buyers are incentivized to make those larger combined orders rather than for individual cards, just to help out with the shipping, because it becomes a really big piece of the transaction. And then the last question is, how can this effort be worthwhile for this? For those orders that are ending up losing you money? Why don't you just raise your floor so that you're not losing those money and not try and sell those cards? Well, like I said, I get to sell those cards inexpensively through direct, and I profit that way. And then for the orders that I have to ship myself that I lose money on, or for games that aren't indirect, like Flesh and Blood or Weisschwarz, those orders that I lose a tiny fraction of money on, I kind of treat that as much like a marketing opportunity, an advertising budget, than anything else. because yeah, I lose 10 or 15 cents on that transaction. But if I were paying for Google AdWords to click on my website, it's $2 or $3 sometimes just to pay for each click, where for every order I send out is going to be in a shipping shield with the QR code on it for my website, or have one of these flyers in it that directs people to my website and to my other stuff. I'm definitely targeting an audience that way that is actually interested in what I'm doing, or at least much more likely to be interested in what I'm doing. And I'm not hoping that the algorithm figures that out for me. Yeah, I'm sending those out in every transaction, so the ones that I'm only losing 10 or 15 cents on, I still get that chance to market to them for 10 or 15 cents instead of $1 or $2 or $3. And I also get the chance to wow them with the user experience of opening up my package with the cards I've sent them. I've got feedback on feedback, review on review. These cards were packaged so well, or this seller definitely cares about getting your cards to you. And I've got 100% feedback on TCGplayer over 35,000 plus transactions. I don't mind paying a little bit for someone who just wanted a 5-cent card or a 10-cent card to have a wow experience and be like, hey, I'm going to remember you, or maybe I'm going to go to your website and see some of the content that you make, or the next time I want to get rid of some bulk, I'll reach out to you on your website, or hey, I'm going to check out your YouTube channel from your website, and it turns out you provide a whole lot of value that way, and maybe I want to get into bulk selling too. And for me, it's a very inexpensive way to get people interested in what I'm doing. So I'm not so worried about 5 or 10 or 15 cent expense, again, because it's all sales that are positive for me. It's all covered. Those cheaper lossy sales are covered by the much larger profits from the larger sales, the combined card sales, the cards that are actually a higher dollar sales, more than make up for those losses. And even on those lossy orders, I'm still gaining marketing and public awareness. So if you have any questions on any of that, you have any ideas, if you just want to talk about any of it, please leave a comment down here. I'm happy to answer comments. I always love answering comments. And if you want to watch any of my videos about TCGplayer Direct, then check out this video right up here. A lot of this is probably not recording. Where was I? Just gonna drink coffee. Anyway,